The Galactic Council chambers were silent, a place where decisions of unimaginable consequence were made every day. Towering walls of shimmering alien metal stretched to the ceiling, their surface glowing faintly with holographic symbols and ancient scripts that no human could read. The room was circular, with seats for representatives from every corner of the galaxy, each species more powerful and more ancient than the last. For centuries, this was where destinies were shaped, where the fate of entire worlds was decided. At the far end of the grand hall sat the representatives of the most powerful species in the galaxy, the Jorath, the towering Ithrax, and the cold, calculating Targan. Together, they had ruled the stars with an iron fist, their strength and technology unmatched. And in front of them, seated in one of the small, humble chairs that had been reserved for Earth, sat Captain Sarah Mitchell. Her uniform, though simple, carried the weight of an entire species. The humans had always been underestimated, always seen as fragile, unimportant compared to the galactic giants surrounding her. Today, the Council was about to make a decision that would define humanity's place in the stars. Captain Mitchell's gaze was steady as she met the eyes of the Council members, but her heart raced. This meeting could decide the future of humanity. She had expected tension, had prepared for the worst, but nothing could have prepared her for the cold, dismissive tone that came next. Captain Mitchell, the Targan representative Zelaron said, his voice smooth as silk. Your species has violated the terms of the Galactic Accord. Your kind's interference with other galactic species is unacceptable. The Council has voted, and your world will be exiled. No trade, no alliance, no future. You will be isolated, forced to live out your existence at the outer edges of the galaxy. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Mitchell's chest tightened, her thoughts spinning. Exiled? The humans? For what? Humanity had always fought to be a part of the greater galaxy, to join the civilizations that had ruled for millennia. But now, with a few words, they were to be cast aside like an unwanted child. Her hand gripped the edge of the table as she fought to maintain her composure. Zelaron continued, his tone almost mocking. It's not personal, Captain, but your people are dangerous. Your unpredictability, your tendency to provoke conflict, it is something the galaxy cannot afford to tolerate. We believe that your continued presence is a threat to the peace we have maintained for eons. Captain Mitchell didn't flinch. She couldn't, not now. Her people had been through too much to let these arrogant aliens break them. What you call unpredictability, she said, her voice calm but steely, we call survival. Earth has faced more challenges than you could imagine. We fight when we must and we endure when we can't. And you underestimate us. The Ithrax representative, towering over the table, growled from deep within his chest. Endurance does not matter when it comes to the laws of the galaxy, human. You are a deathworld species. Your survival instinct is a danger to us all. You push boundaries that should not be pushed. Mitchell stood, her voice unwavering. If that's what you think, then you've misunderstood everything about humanity. We're not here to be your subjects, to be controlled. We've fought for our place in the galaxy, and we'll fight for it again if we have to. You can exile us, but you cannot erase us. A murmur ran through the room, the other council members exchanging glances. The Jorath representative, an ancient creature whose cold eyes glimmered with centuries of experience, narrowed his gaze. We will not discuss this further. The vote is final. Mitchell stood tall, her heart pounding. Then the decision is made. You've exiled us, but you've made a mistake. Humanity will not fade quietly into the dark. We will not be a footnote in your history books. We will rise, and when we do, you will regret this decision. There was silence in the room. Mitchell's words hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, it felt as though the entire galaxy was holding its breath. Zelaron waved his hand dismissively. You are dismissed, Captain Mitchell. Return to your planet. Do not waste our time further. Your species will not be missed. Mitchell gave a small nod. We'll see about that, she said under her breath, loud enough for the council to hear. She turned and walked out of the chamber, her back straight and her resolve even straighter. She could feel the eyes of the other species upon her, some sympathetic, others judging. But she didn't care. Humanity had been pushed too far, and now it was time to make them see. Once she was outside the council chamber, Mitchell walked briskly down the corridor, her mind racing. She could feel the weight of the decision hanging over her. The council might have thought they could isolate Earth, push them to the edge of the galaxy and forget about them. But Mitchell knew better. She knew the resilience of the human spirit. She knew that no matter how impossible it seemed, humanity would find a way to survive, to push back, to fight. In the hallway, Lieutenant James Riker, one of her most trusted officers, stood waiting for her. His expression was grim, but there was a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Captain," he said quietly, "it's done. The Council has sealed our fate." Mitchell nodded, her jaw tight. "Yes, but that doesn't mean it's over. This is just the beginning." Riker raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "We're leaving," Mitchell said, her voice filled with determination. "But not quietly. We'll go, but we'll leave a message. The galaxy may have exiled us, but they'll remember who we are. We will show them that humanity will not be forgotten. Not by the Joreth, not by the Targan, and not by any of them." As Mitchell and Riker made their way back to the human ship, she felt a deep sense of resolve settle over her. The fight had just begun. They may have been cast out, but they would not fade into nothingness. Earth had always survived against the odds, and now the galaxy would see just how powerful the human spirit could be. It was time to show the galaxy what they had overlooked for so long. Time to show them that humanity would never go quietly. As Captain Sarah Mitchell boarded the Pride of Earth, her mind raced. The decision made by the Galactic Council was final. Humanity had been exiled, its future uncertain. But as the heavy doors to the ship's command center sealed behind her, Mitchell knew one thing for sure. They weren't going to take this lying down. "Captain," Lieutenant James Riker said as he approached, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We've gathered all the intel we could. The fleet's ready, but the Council isn't backing off. We have to be prepared for retaliation. We need to decide what to do next." Mitchell looked at him, her expression firm. "Retaliation won't matter. What matters now is showing them who we are. The Council believes they can isolate us, but they've made the biggest mistake of all. Humanity will not be forgotten, and we won't just survive, we'll make them regret this." Riker nodded, but there was still a hint of concern in his eyes. "I agree, Captain, but we have to be careful. We're small, and they are not. The Joreth and Targan won't hesitate to wipe us out if we push them too far." Mitchell paused, staring out of the viewports of the ship. The vastness of space stretched out before them, an expanse so empty, so cold. And yet, in that emptiness, she saw the possibility of something great. She saw the chance for humanity to prove its worth, not through brute force but through sheer will. "We won't start a war," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "But we won't hide. We'll strike where it hurts when they least expect it. We'll remind them that humanity is a force to be reckoned with." Riker studied her for a moment, then stepped aside as Mitchell moved to the tactical station. The rest of the crew, focused on their duties, looked up as she approached. They had all heard the news from the Council. Earth's fate was sealed. But now they were ready to prove something to the Council, to the galaxy, and to themselves. "Prepare the fleet for departure," Mitchell ordered. "We're going to make our move. The galaxy thinks we've been silenced, but I'm about to make them hear us." As the Pride of Earth and the rest of humanity's fleet entered hyperspace, Mitchell sat in her chair, her eyes fixed on the starry expanse before her. The weight of her responsibility pressed down on her shoulders, but she felt no fear. It was as though the galaxy itself had been handed to her on a silver platter, ready to be shaped by the human spirit. "Where are we headed, Captain?" Riker asked as he looked at her. She took a deep breath, the tension of the past hours fading slightly. "We've made contact with our allies. The Kralrath, the Zeorosians, and the Andorans, they're all willing to help us. But we need to send a message. It has to be something that shows the galaxy we are not to be ignored. We're going to hit their supply lines, the ones closest to the Council's home base. They think we're insignificant. They think they can starve us out. Let's show them they're wrong." Riker nodded, and he relayed her orders to the rest of the fleet. The human ships powered up, and one by one they followed the Pride of Earth into the dark abyss of space. The operation was executed with precision. Mitchell's strategy was simple but effective. Strike fast, strike hard, and leave no room for the enemy to retaliate immediately. Using their allies' advanced knowledge of the Council's weak points, humanity's fleet slipped through the Joreth and Targan defenses like shadows in the night. The first strike came at the heart of the Joreth supply lines. An armada of human ships, hidden by the galaxy's natural nebulae and dust clouds, launched an attack on an unsuspecting Joreth convoy. The weapon's fire was sharp, sudden, and overwhelming. The Joreth convoy, without the proper defenses, was torn apart in a matter of minutes. "Strike successful," came the message from the fleet commander. "We've disabled their communications and destroyed 2 of their major supply freighters." Mitchell's lips curved into a tight smile. This was only the beginning. The humans were proving their point. They wouldn't be ignored. But the retaliation from the Joreth came almost immediately. Moments after the successful strike, Joreth warships began pouring out from their stations. The humans had made their presence known, and the galaxy's most feared species were not pleased. "Ready to engage the enemy, Captain," Riker said, his tone colder now. "They're bringing everything they have. We've just drawn a line in the sand." Mitchell's heart beat faster, but her mind remained focused. "Hold our position," she ordered. "We will not run. We've sent the message. Now we stand and fight, no matter what." The Joreth ships advanced, their weapons charged and ready to fire. But the humans were not intimidated. Mitchell had planned for this. They had already disabled the key supply lines, and now it was time to hit the Joreth where it would hurt the most, their leadership. "Deploy the fleet's decoys," she ordered. "We'll draw their fire away from our true target." The decoy ships, launched at precise intervals, confused the Joreth fleet, drawing their attention away from Mitchell's real plan. As the Joreth ships split their fire between the decoys and the real human fleet, Mitchell's forces slipped around the enemy's flanks. They targeted the Joreth's flagship, the heart of their command. The battle was fierce, but the human fleet moved with precision and speed, a coordinated dance of survival and defiance. With every blast from their weapons, the humans reminded the galaxy what they were capable of. They were no longer the insignificant species of Earth. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Pride of Earth led the charge, its weapons blazing as it pierced the enemy's defenses. For every ship that fell, another human ship took its place, unwavering in their resolve. Mitchell's heart pounded, but there was no fear. She had made the choice to stand tall, to show the galaxy that humanity would never be silenced. As the Joreth flagship began to crumble, Mitchell knew the tide was turning. The galaxy was watching, and humanity's place in the stars was no longer in question. Back at the command center, Riker's voice came over the comms. "Captain, the Joreth flagship is down. We've disabled their command structure." Mitchell's lips curled into a satisfied smile. "Good, let's pull back, we've made our point." But just as she was about to give the order to retreat, a voice crackled over the communication channel. It was Zelaron, the Targan representative from the Council. "You've made your statement, human," he said, his voice cold. "But know this, the Council will not forgive this. You've just thrown away any chance of peace." Mitchell's eyes narrowed, but her response was calm and measured. "We didn't come here for peace. We came here to prove that humanity will never be controlled. We've done that." "Then prepare yourself, Captain," Zelaron replied. "This is only the beginning." Mitchell turned to Riker, her resolve unwavering. "Let them come. Humanity is ready." Joreth were furious. Their once impenetrable fleets had been shattered, their supplies decimated, and their flagship reduced to scrap. Yet despite their anger, the greatest blow was the realization that humanity was not only alive but thriving in the darkness. The humans had struck where it hurt the most, and now the galaxy would pay attention. The Pride of Earth was still in motion, its engines humming softly as it glided through the void of space. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood at the helm, her hands steady on the control panel. The mission was far from over, and the stakes had just risen exponentially. The Jorath and their allies would retaliate. They had to. But what they didn't realize was that humanity was more than capable of fighting back. The ship's crew moved with a quiet purpose, preparing for whatever would come next. Their earlier victories had been a testament to their courage, but Mitchell knew the true battle was still ahead. The humans had been cast aside, left to die in the corners of the galaxy. But now they had shown their power and they had allies. The tide was turning. "We've dealt a blow, Captain," Lieutenant Riker said, his voice calm yet laced with a tense edge. "But we've also made ourselves a target. They're going to retaliate with everything they have." Mitchell didn't flinch. "We've known this moment was coming, but we're not running, not anymore. Humanity has made its stand." Riker nodded and turned to the rest of the crew, giving the orders to prepare the fleet for the inevitable attack. The Jorath would come, but this time they wouldn't be fighting a lone ship. They would face a unified front, humanity, and their newly formed alliance of other oppressed species. The Kralrath, the Zeorosians, and a few others had pledged their support. Earth wasn't alone anymore. As the hours passed, the atmosphere in the command center grew thicker with tension. Mitchell paced back and forth, her thoughts racing. The human fleet had grown in strength since their first strike, but it still wasn't enough to match the might of the entire council. The only thing they had on their side was surprise and the element of unpredictability. And that was a weapon the humans wielded better than any advanced alien technology. "Captain, we've picked up Jorath ships on our sensors," one of the crew members called out. "They're coming in fast." Mitchell stopped packing and turned to face the console. "How many?" "Too many to count," came the reply. "This is their counteroffensive, Captain. They're sending everything they've got." Mitchell felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. There was no more room for mistakes. "Riker, get the fleet into position. We hold them off. Make sure they know we're not going to be cowed into submission." "We won't let you down, Captain," Riker said, his voice firm with the resolve of a soldier who had seen the worst of what the galaxy could throw at them. Outside the ship, the vast emptiness of space suddenly exploded into action. The Jorath fleets were advancing, ships of all sizes, their black silhouettes cutting through the stars like an incoming storm. Their weapons, deadly and precise, lit up the void as they charged toward the human fleet. The Pride of Earth and the other ships in humanity's fleet formed a protective line, ready for the assault. The humans were vastly outnumbered, but they had no intention of backing down. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was a fight for respect, for their place in the galaxy. The first blast from a Jorath warship struck the side of a Kralrath ship. It exploded in a brilliant flash of light, sending debris scattering across the battlefield. The battle had begun, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. "Engage," Mitchell shouted. The command echoed through the ship's comms system, and immediately the fleet opened fire. The humans fought with fury. Every weapon, every maneuver was an act of defiance. They moved like a swarm, darting between the larger Jorath ships, striking hard and fast. The humans didn't wait for their enemies to make the first move. They took the initiative, hitting the Jorath where it hurt the most, their engines, their shields, their weapons. With every blast, humanity reminded the galaxy that they were not just survivors. They were fighters. "Direct hit to their shield generator," one of the crew members called. "We've taken down their defense system." "Good," Mitchell replied, her voice calm. "Keep pushing. We can win this." The battle raged on, the roar of weapons fire and explosions filling the empty vacuum of space. It was chaos, but Mitchell's mind stayed sharp. The Jorath had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to improvise. But now they were learning the hard way. They had expected humanity to crumble. They had expected the humans to break under pressure. Instead, the humans had turned the tables. "We're taking down their fleet, Captain," Riker reported, his voice full of excitement. "Their ships are breaking apart, retreating. This is working." Mitchell didn't allow herself a smile just yet. The war was far from over. "Hold steady," she said. "We have to make them pay for every mistake. They won't get away so easily." As the Joreth fleet began to falter, the Alliance ships pressed harder, refusing to give them the chance to regroup. For the first time in ages, the Joreth were on the back foot, their superior firepower and numbers no longer the deciding factor. Humanity had made sure of that. Hours passed and the battle slowly began to turn in humanity's favor. Joreth ships were disabled, some destroyed completely. The enemy forces, once so confident, were now retreating, their lines breaking under the pressure. Captain Mitchell stood at the front of the bridge, watching as the remaining Joreth ships fled into the darkness. Her chest rose and fell with each breath, the exhaustion from the fight settling in. But despite the weariness, she felt a sense of pride. "We did it," Riker said, his voice full of awe. "We actually did it." Mitchell nodded, but her eyes remained focused on the empty space where the Joreth fleet had once stood. "Not yet," she said quietly. "This is just one battle, but it's a start." Back on Earth, the human fleet began to retreat into the safety of the outer reaches of the galaxy. The Council had been humiliated, their power shaken by the unexpected defiance of a species they had long considered insignificant. Mitchell turned to her crew, her voice firm and filled with the fire of a leader who had just led her people through the storm. "This is our time. Humanity has proven that we belong in the galaxy, that we won't be ruled by anyone. We've only just begun." The crew cheered, but Mitchell's mind was already on what was to come. The Joreth had been beaten, but there were more enemies out there, the Targan, the Ithrax, and the other factions who still thought humanity was beneath them. But she wasn't worried. They had proven they could fight, that they could win. And as long as they had the will to do so, they would never back down. "Prepare for the next phase," Mitchell said, her voice full of determination. "We fight for Earth. We fight for our future." Silence after the battle was deafening. The Joreth had been forced into retreat, their fleet scattered, their superiority shattered. The stars outside the window of the Pride of Earth were calm, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Humanity had struck first, and for the first time in galactic history, the Council had underestimated them. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood at the front of the command deck, looking out into the expanse of space. Her mind was still processing the victory, but she knew it wasn't over. The Joreth were defeated for now, but the galaxy had many more forces, many more enemies. The Council would come for them. The rest of the galaxy would be watching, waiting, and calculating the next move. "We've done it," Lieutenant Riker said, his voice filled with a mix of relief and disbelief. "We've sent them a message." Mitchell didn't look at him, her eyes still focused on the stars. "Yes," she said, her voice steady but filled with the weight of what had just been accomplished. "But the message isn't over. We're just getting started." Her words lingered in the air, thick with the understanding that the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. They had fought back. They had refused to be silenced. And now they would have to face the consequences of their actions. The Pride of Earth and the rest of humanity's fleet moved slowly toward a nearby star system. It was a moment of calm after the storm, but Mitchell knew it wouldn't last. She stood, watching the crew as they worked efficiently, their exhaustion hidden behind professional masks. Every member of the crew knew what was coming. It was only a matter of time before the rest of the galaxy reacted. "Captain," Riker said, stepping up beside her, "we've received messages from some of our allies. The Kralrath and the Zeorosians are already mobilizing their forces. They're preparing to send a full fleet to support us. The Joreth's retreat may have bought us time, but we need to be ready for what comes next." Mitchell nodded. The support of their allies was invaluable, but she also knew that the Joreth wouldn't give up so easily. "We'll be ready. Make sure the fleet stays in formation. We've proven we can fight, but now we need to prove we can win this war." "Understood, Captain," Riker said, giving a respectful nod before returning to his post. Mitchell stood alone for a moment, her thoughts swirling. The fight wasn't just about Earth anymore. It was about all the species the Council had oppressed, all the civilizations that had been forced to bow to the will of a few. Humanity had sparked a fire, but she feared that the flames were spreading far faster than anyone had predicted. The days that followed were filled with preparations. The humans, though still a fledgling force in the grand scheme of the galaxy, had become a beacon of defiance. Across the galaxy, whispers of their victory spread, reaching the ears of planets once too afraid to act. The Jorath's humiliation had been seen by many. It wasn't just the Jorath that had been toppled, but the idea that the Council's rule was absolute. In the Kralrath fleet, Commander Jog stood before his officers, his expression grim. The humans' victory had been the spark they had been waiting for. "The time has come," he said, his voice low but filled with conviction. "We will join them. We will fight beside humanity." The officers in the room nodded. Jog could see the fire in their eyes, the same fire that had driven humanity to act. They had been waiting for a chance to strike, but no one had dared challenge the Council. Until now. Back aboard the Pride of Earth, Mitchell was preparing her speech. A speech that would be broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. A speech that would make the Council understand that humanity would not be cowed, that their place among the stars had been earned. She walked to the front of the bridge and tapped the comm system. "This is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Pride of Earth. To the galactic powers watching, to the Jorath, the Targan, the Ithrax, humanity stands united. We are not your pawns. We are not the weak, helpless species you thought we were. We have proven ourselves in battle, and we will continue to prove ourselves. You may have the numbers, the weapons, and the experience, but we have something you'll never understand: the will to fight, the will to survive. And we will fight for our place, for Earth, for our future among the stars." She paused, taking a deep breath. "To the people who have suffered under the Council's rule, we offer our hand. We are not alone, and you are not forgotten. We will stand together, and we will bring the fight to those who have oppressed us all." The silence that followed her words was deafening. Mitchell could feel her pulse racing. The message had been sent, and now it was up to the galaxy to respond. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing: humanity was no longer an afterthought. They had proven their worth, and they would not be ignored again. The response came quickly. One by one, planets that had been silent for so long began to speak out. The Kralrath, the Zeorosians, and even the once feared Andorans sent messages of support. The message was clear. Humanity had not only inspired them, but they had given them hope. The galaxy was no longer under the heel of the Council. The balance of power was shifting, and humanity was at the center of it. The Jorath, meanwhile, were far from pleased. Their pride had been shattered, their fleet broken, and their control over the galaxy fractured. They could not let this stand. In their cold, calculating minds, they knew that humanity's actions had sparked something far bigger than they had anticipated. "We will make them pay," Zelaron, the Targan representative, growled. "The humans and their allies will pay the price for this defiance. They will understand the cost of challenging the Council." Days turned into weeks, and the humans held their ground. They had no illusions about what the future would hold. The Jorath and their allies would retaliate, and the war would intensify. But the humans had made their stand. They had shown the galaxy that they were not afraid, and that was something the Council and even the Jorath could never take away. Mitchell stood once again at the command center of the Pride of Earth, her eyes scanning the stars. There was no fear in her, only determination. She knew what was coming, and she was ready for it. Humanity had fought for its place in the galaxy, and now they would defend it with everything they had. "Prepare for the next phase," she said, her voice calm but filled with a fierce conviction. "We've made our mark, and now we hold our ground. We fight not just for Earth, but for every species that has ever been oppressed. This is just the beginning. The crew nodded, and Mitchell felt the fire of unity, the strength of her people as it burned brighter than ever. They had faced the darkness. Now they would rise. The atmosphere on the Pride of Earth was thick with tension. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood at the command center, her eyes fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. The hum of the ship's engines was a comforting sound, but underneath that comfort was a rising storm. The battle that had begun in the shadows was now spilling into the light. The Council, once an unshakable entity, was on the verge of collapse, and humanity was at the center of it. The Jorath had retreated for the moment, but the signs were clear. They were regrouping, readying for their next strike. The Targan, humiliated by their own underestimation of humanity, had called for reinforcements. The galaxy's most powerful species were assembling for a final confrontation. Humanity had set its place in the stars, but that place would be earned through blood and fire. No one knew that better than Mitchell. The future of Earth, the future of all who dared to defy the Council, now rested on the shoulders of those who had made the choice to stand tall. Captain, Lieutenant Riker's voice broke through her thoughts, his face grim. The Jorath fleet has begun to regroup. They're moving in fast. They've called in the Targan and the Ithrax. They're forming a coalition against us. Mitchell turned, her gaze unwavering. We knew this was coming. We've made our choice, and now we make them pay for their arrogance. The question is, are we ready? We've got the Kralrath, the Zeorosians, and a few others backing us, Riker said, his voice tinged with urgency. But we're still outnumbered. We need a plan, and we need it fast. Mitchell took a deep breath, letting the weight of the moment settle in. We fight smart. We hit their weak points, strike fast, and make them question every move they've made. We won't beat them with brute force, but we can outthink them. We'll give them a fight they won't forget. The human fleet moved quickly, taking its place alongside their newfound allies. The Kralrath had brought their most advanced ships, their stealth technology proving invaluable as humanity's forces prepared for the inevitable clash. The Zeorosians, though a relatively small fleet, fought with a ferocity that matched any of the Council's most powerful members. Mitchell stood at the helm, eyes locked on the fleet ahead. Her crew was silent, their resolve written on their faces. Humanity was a small player in the grand scheme of things, but they had something the galaxy's most powerful species lacked: unity. We've got one shot at this, Riker said quietly. If we can hit their command center, we can cripple their coordination. But if we fail, we risk everything. Mitchell's jaw tightened. We won't fail. As the enemy fleets approached, the battle began in earnest. The Jorath warships were massive, their guns capable of reducing planets to rubble, their shields impenetrable by most weapons. But humanity had learned long ago how to fight with what they had. They didn't need the biggest ships or the strongest weapons. They just needed the will to fight and the cleverness to make their limited resources count. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, Mitchell ordered. Keep the fleet in tight formation. We'll make them chase us. The battle unfolded in a blur. Jorath ships fired their massive cannons, sending explosions rippling through space. But the human fleet, smaller and nimbler, darted in and out of the enemy's line of fire, striking the Jorath where their defenses were weakest. Humanity wasn't just surviving, they were pushing the Jorath back, and for the first time, it was the Council's fleets that were on the defensive. Mitchell watched the chaos unfold on the holographic map in front of her. The Jorath had underestimated them once again. They had come expecting an easy victory, but humanity wasn't going to make it that simple. The human fleet danced between enemy ships, launching their attacks with deadly precision. They aimed for weak points, engine cores, shield generators, anything that could cripple the enemy. Enemy flagship is in our sights, Riker called out. One more hit and it's down. Mitchell nodded. Take the shot, make it count. The Pride of Earth launched a full assault on the Jorath flagship, firing everything they had. The massive ship shuddered under the barrage, sparks flying from its shields as the weapons hit their mark. Slowly, but surely, the flagship systems began to fail. The Jorath's defenses faltered, and the human fleet moved in for the kill. "Direct hit to their reactor," one of the crew members shouted. "They're losing power, we've got them." Mitchell's heart raced. This was it. The Jorath flagship, the heart of their command structure, was on the brink of destruction. But just as victory seemed within their grasp, a wave of Targan reinforcements arrived, their massive ships charging toward humanity's position. "We're not done yet," Mitchell barked. "All ships engage, hold your ground." The human fleet, though battered, held fast, engaging the Targan reinforcements with everything they had. It was a fierce, desperate fight, but humanity's determination shone through. The Jorath had made the mistake of thinking they were the only ones with the strength to rule the galaxy. Now, humanity was showing them otherwise. The battle continued for hours, the tides of war shifting with every passing minute. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but humanity held their ground. The Jorath flagship finally exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its destruction sending a shockwave through the enemy fleet. The Targan, seeing their allies falter, hesitated. The humans had done what no one expected. They had crippled the Jorath, and now their forces were in disarray. The battle wasn't won yet, but the balance had shifted. The once feared invaders were now the ones on the run. "Captain, the enemy is retreating," Riker reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "We've done it. They're pulling back." Mitchell looked out at the battle, the remnants of the Jorath fleet now drifting in space. Her heart was heavy with the realization of what had just occurred. Humanity had taken on the most powerful species in the galaxy and lived to tell the tale. "We did it," Mitchell whispered. "We've shown them what it means to underestimate us." As the battle ended and the human fleet began to regroup, the enormity of their victory began to sink in. Humanity had done it. They had faced the might of the galaxy's most powerful forces, and they had come out on top, but Mitchell knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would have to adjust. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They had earned their place in the stars, and they were prepared to defend it with everything they had. The silence after the battle was unlike anything Mitchell had ever felt before. The hum of the ship's engines and the soft crackling of the comms system were the only sounds in the command center. Outside, the once mighty Jorath fleet was in retreat, its remaining ships limping away, damaged and disoriented. The stars outside seemed unchanged, yet for Captain Sarah Mitchell, everything had shifted. Humanity had stood up against the most powerful forces in the galaxy, and against all odds they had won. The Jorath flagship had been destroyed and their coalition was fractured. The Targan forces, once so confident, had retreated in the face of human defiance. But even as the enemy ships scattered, Mitchell knew it wasn't over. The Council would come for them. The galaxy's most powerful species would not forgive such a blow easily. Mitchell turned from the viewport and looked at her crew. They were exhausted, their faces drawn with fatigue, but their eyes gleamed with a quiet pride. They had done it. They had fought and they had won. But Mitchell also knew that the real battle was just beginning. "Report," she said, her voice calm but filled with authority. Riker, standing nearby, looked up from his station. "We've done as much damage as we could. The Jorath are retreating, but we've taken heavy losses. Several of our ships are barely holding together. The Targan are still regrouping, but they're not attacking for now." Mitchell nodded. "We've made our point, but it's not over yet. We need to prepare for what comes next. This battle may have ended, but the war is far from finished." The Pride of Earth moved through space, leaving the remains of the battle behind them. The Jorath, the Targan, and the other galactic powers had underestimated humanity, will to survive. The humans had struck where they could, dealt a blow that would echo across the stars, but now they had to build on that momentum. Mitchell knew that the galaxy had taken notice. The Jorath had suffered a humiliating defeat, and their pride had been shattered. But the rest of the galaxy, those who had kept their heads down and avoided conflict with the Council, were watching closely. Would humanity rise to the challenge, or would they fall back into obscurity, forgotten by the stars? "Captain, we're receiving a message from the Kralrath," Riker said, his voice crackling with the static of the comms system. "Put it through," Mitchell replied, her curiosity piqued. A hologram appeared before her, and Commander Jawk of the Kralrath appeared on the screen. His face was stern, but there was an unmistakable respect in his eyes. "Captain Mitchell," Jawk began, his voice deep and measured, "your victory has not gone unnoticed. The Kralrath stand with you. We will support humanity in the coming days. The Jareth will not forget this, but neither will we." Mitchell's heart swelled with pride. "Thank you, Commander. Humanity will not forget the support of the Kralrath. This is just the beginning." Joak's eyes narrowed slightly. "The Jareth and their allies will seek revenge, but they are not as strong as they think. They will falter. You have shown them that, and now others are beginning to see the truth. We will stand together." The message ended, and Mitchell let out a quiet breath. Humanity had not only fought the Jareth, but they had earned the respect of their allies. The galaxy was no longer just watching. The game had changed. Humanity was a player now. Back on Earth, the reaction was mixed. While many celebrated the victory, others feared what would come next. Earth's government had always been wary of intergalactic conflict. Yet the bravery of their forces, their defiance, had inspired something new. People were no longer scared of the galaxy's might. They saw a future where humanity wasn't just a pawn but a force to be reckoned with. "Captain," Riker said, returning to Mitchell's side, "the media is buzzing. The victory has spread across the galaxy. Earth's people are watching, waiting." Mitchell gave a small, tired smile. "Let them wait. We've proven ourselves, but the next step is more important. We have to unite. We have to show the galaxy that we're not just fighters. We're survivors. We'll build alliances, gather strength, and stand firm against any who wish to challenge us." In the heart of the Jareth fleet, things were tense. Zelaron, the Targan representative, stood before his people, his eyes cold with anger. The human victory had shaken him to his core. How could they have underestimated such a primitive species? It wasn't just a defeat, it was a message. The humans were not weak, they were a threat. "We cannot allow this to stand," Zelaron said, his voice steady but filled with a simmering rage. "The humans will pay for this. The galaxy will pay for this. We will not allow a species like that to stand in our way." But there was doubt in his eyes. The Council's decision to isolate humanity had been made in haste, underestimating their resilience. The humans had fought back with a passion the galaxy had never seen. And that, Zelaron realized, was something dangerous. The Jareth were powerful, but they weren't invincible, and they knew it now. Back in the human fleet, Mitchell watched the stars outside, her mind shifting between the future and the past. The fight for humanity's place in the galaxy was only just beginning. The Jareth would regroup, and the Targan would find new ways to oppose them. But humanity had proven something important. They weren't just survivors, they were warriors. "We've sent a message," Riker said quietly, his voice filled with admiration. "We've shown them that humanity won't be ignored." Mitchell nodded, her eyes never leaving the stars. "Yes, but now we have to make sure they remember it." She turned to her crew, a fierce determination in her gaze. "We've earned our place in the galaxy. We've proven we can fight, and we've proven we can win. But now it's time to build. We need allies, we need strength, and we need to make sure humanity stands tall, not just today, but in the years to come." The galaxy was watching. The Jareth, the Targan, and others would retaliate, but humanity had already begun to forge a new path. The Council had never seen a species like this, relentless, defiant, and proud. The war had only just begun, but humanity had already shown the galaxy that they would never be silenced. They would fight for their place, for their future, and for their people. The days after the battle felt like a waiting game. The pride of Earth drifted through the vast emptiness of space, its crew exhausted but resolute. Captain Sarah Mitchell sat in the command center, staring out at the stars. The Joreth had retreated, their flagship destroyed, their fleet scattered. But Mitchell knew this moment of peace was fleeting. The galaxy's most powerful species would not let such an insult go unanswered. The real battle, the one that would define humanity's future, was still ahead. "Captain, we've received word from our allies," Lieutenant Riker said as he entered the room. His tone was serious, but there was a hint of optimism in his voice. "The Kralrath and Zeorosians are sending reinforcements. They're ready to stand with us." Mitchell nodded, her eyes still fixed on the dark expanse of space outside the window. "That's good news, but it's not enough. The Joreth and the Targan will come for us. We need to be ready for their retaliation. This victory was important, but it's only one battle." Riker approached the tactical console, his fingers flying across the controls. "The human fleet is still intact, but the Targan are already regrouping. They've called in their full force. The Council's response will be swift." Mitchell let out a breath, her fingers running through her hair. The weight of what was coming felt almost unbearable. The Joreth had been humbled, but they were only one part of the larger galactic order. The Targan and their allies would come, and they wouldn't be as easy to defeat. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Council was in disarray. The humiliating defeat of the Joreth fleet had shaken the foundation of galactic power. The Targan, furious at their failure, had begun assembling their forces. The Ithrax and other Council species, once too afraid to act against the Joreth, were now beginning to consider the humans a threat, but also a challenge. Zelaron, the Targan representative, stood before his council. His face was hard, his eyes cold. He had always believed that humanity was beneath notice, but after the events of the past weeks, his belief in the Council's unchallenged dominance had been shattered. "We've underestimated them," Zelaron said, his voice low and dangerous. "The humans are a force. Their victory over the Joreth wasn't just luck. They've proven they can fight, and now we'll need to do everything in our power to crush them." The other Targan representatives shifted uneasily. It wasn't fear, but rather a realization that this was no longer a one-sided war. Humanity had made their presence known, and it couldn't be ignored. Back aboard the Pride of Earth, Mitchell's resolve hardened. "We've shown them what we're capable of. Now we show them what humanity is really made of. We will not be destroyed. We will survive." Riker looked at her, a rare moment of doubt crossing his face. "We've fought back once, Captain, but if the Targan and Joreth come together, we'll be outnumbered, outgunned." Mitchell met his gaze. "We have no choice, Lieutenant. We didn't start this war, but we will finish it. Humanity will not be cast aside. We will rise, and we will make the galaxy understand that we belong." The human fleet prepared itself for what was to come. The reinforcements from the Kralrath and Zeorosians had arrived, bringing with them their advanced technology and battle-tested soldiers. The galaxy, once thought to be ruled by the Joreth and their allies, was now changing. The humans were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a place of respect. The tension in the command center was palpable as Mitchell stood before the fleet, her eyes scanning the faces of her crew. They were tired, but they were not afraid. Each of them knew what was at stake. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long, but now humanity was ready to show them who they were. "Listen up," Mitchell said, her voice calm but full of fire. "We've been cast aside, humiliated, and thrown into the corners of the galaxy, but we're not just going to survive this. We will fight. We will win. This is our moment, and we won't back down." The crew nodded in silent agreement. Their eyes were filled with determination, the spark of rebellion flickering within them. The humans had been pushed too far, but now they were no longer the underdogs. They were warriors. The battle began in the dark reaches of space, far from the eyes of the Council. The Targan fleet, led by their largest warships, arrived in full force. But humanity wasn't caught off guard. The Pride of Earth led the charge, its sleek hull cutting through the void as the rest of the fleet followed. The Kralreth and Zeerosion stood by their side, their weapons ready. The battle was about to unfold. The Targon fired first, their weapons lighting up the void like fireworks in the night sky. The human fleet returned fire, the space around them filled with flashes of light and the roar of weapons. Humanity fought with everything they had, using their agility and surprise tactics to outmaneuver their larger foes. The Targon ships were formidable, but humanity had something they couldn't anticipate: the will to survive. "Keep the pressure on them," Mitchell shouted, watching the battle unfold on the holomap. "Don't let up, we're not here to lose." The human ships darted in and out of the Targon's lines, striking with precision. The Targon warships, while powerful, were slow. The human fleet used their speed to their advantage, finding weak points in the Targon defenses and exploiting them with ruthless efficiency. The Targon flagship, the heart of their assault, loomed ahead. Mitchell knew it had to be taken down. If they took out the flagship, they would break the Targon's morale. The Pride of Earth took aim, its guns blazing. "Target the flagship," Mitchell ordered. "Full power to weapons, this ends now." The Pride of Earth fired its final shot, the energy from the ship's cannons tearing through the Targon flagship's shields. The massive ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its destruction sending shockwaves through the Targon fleet. The enemy's forces faltered, their lines breaking apart. Humanity had done it again. The Targon, who had once believed themselves invincible, were now in retreat. The Zorath, the Targon, and their allies were on the run. On the Pride of Earth, Mitchell watched as the Targon forces scrambled, their once proud fleet now shattered and retreating. Her heart raced, but her voice was steady as she turned to her crew. "We've shown them that humanity is not to be ignored. We've made our mark, and we won't stop until we've secured our place." The room erupted in cheers. The crew knew that this was only a temporary victory, but it was a significant one. Humanity had proven they could not be crushed, and now the galaxy would never forget them. As the human fleet prepared for the next stage of the war, Mitchell stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the stars. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. No longer would they be treated as insignificant. They had earned their place, and now they would fight for it. The war was far from over, but humanity had shown the galaxy that they would not go quietly into the night. They would rise.